Sniphing Phartz, a monograph on alternative paleoecology and its potential impact on dinosaurian predation, by Wild Bill Cox. Accolades. Since I'm a dinosaur myself, I ought to know a lot about this junk. Abstract. A form of artwork often executed in paints on canvas or sleeping girlfriends, in which the expressing of emotion, kinesis, or simply ennui is accomplished by sublime manipulation of color density, use of positive and negative space, and or juxtaposition of heterogeneous elements, characterized by themes spawned from the employment of colors to evoke resonance directly in the amygdala, bypassing higher function altogether, which means dinosaurian predators would have got it, even if we cerebrum-driven moderns don't. Premise. Recent lines of experimentation have been aimed at gathering data suitable for modeling of atmospheric compositions and generic conditions in situ for the Mesozoic era, with an easily understandable focus on the late Maastrichtian. Preliminary correlations of significant and on-motif data over the last decade, some of it easily available online, have enabled a few brave souls to embark upon a voyage of particularly odious discovery, vis-a-vis conditions endemic to the late Mesozoic. Thus far, we have been tantalized and regaled with indications that both O2 and CH4 content in our familiar air were present in higher proportion than today obtains. Methane, long thought untenable under terrestrial surface, read tropospheric, conditions, is a very interesting substance both in low and moderate temperature chemistry. In our current atmospheric mix, it is a greenhouse gas, and in reaction with other atmospheric elements, plus a little bit of solar influx, assists the creation and perpetration of what we have long called photochemical smog. Smog, eh? So that's where LA gets its distinctive ambience? Not hardly, companero. It's the weed, but more on that another time. The point here is twofold. The amount of methane in today's soup of gases is negligible, far less than 1%. If it were a significant component in the Maastrichtian environment, then that Therapodian Eden's atmospheric clarity or visibility must have been less like that of the Holocene African veldt, and more like a Stone Age psychedelic band concert. So far, so good, ist klar, ja? Two more considerations pop up right away, namely, dude, did not tell me you just said that methane is unstable at this radius from Earth's soul or some junk, followed by, if so, and it has a short shelf life out here at 1 AU, from whence cometh its source and wellspring? In other words, where are you getting your fresh supply from? Volcanism, for one thing. There's a lot of clean, safe, efficient propane and propane accessories down under, as we say at the Ross Ice Shelf 5-star resort. It spews and pours and burps out of the ground, for crying out loud. More methane is today released from active volcanoes and their associated magma reservoirs than is in all of your carbon footprint philosophies combined, Horatio. Even so, and if you add in all the whale farts, fish don't fart, it was negotiated out of their contract by a quick-talking lawyer, and the aggregate detritus of 6.5 giga ramen value meals a day that mankind exudes, the total percentage of methane in our air is still next to nothing. Huh. Well, if not so, Mr. City Slicker, why was there more back then? Good question. Let me try to field that one too. Methane comes from volcanism, either formed thereby or given transit to the surface through dikes and faults from a compromised reservoir. So, maybe it was more volcanic back then? I bet I'm onto something here. But there must be a mechanism for achieving a sort of stable proportion too, or all the locals would wake up dead, like they do in benthic thermal vent communities when the saline content goes up overnight. Well, that's poser for sure, Mr. Wizard. A lizard, by the way, who lives in a shoebox at the base of a tall oak tree. So what kind of mechanism you gonna posit? After all, the sun is doing all he can to make that nasty methane stuff get the hell out of Dodge, right? Damn, you hicks are getting smarter every day. You don't know the half of it. I already hacked your WoW account while we was John. As a mechanism for this need to balance out atmospheric components in high oxygen, high methane ambience, I reach out beyond the heliopause into the interstellar medium to locate any of a number of large molecular clouds appropriate to my purpose. Keep these clouds of particulates and gas molecules in mind, as they'll be important in a minute or two. The solar nebula, adduced by some to be about 11 gigayears old, had a large methane component, of course, for thus are some of our most honored inhabitants attired. When our sun reached the T-Tauri stage, it should have punched away remnants of the nebula in a very short time, cosmologically speaking, that is. So, didn't it? Now I recall your attention to that molecular cloud. Our solar nebula wasn't the only ball of dust and stinky cheese in our neck of the galactic woods, for star formation takes place in wave fronts, planar sheets, and often in associations of multiples of type, usually buried deep within giant molecular cloud regions. Steep our nascent Mesozoic in a star-spawned soup of adequate and methanous composition, and the sun would find it a lot more difficult to clear the solar neighborhood until conditions again changed. As long as we are passing through a fog, so to speak, that fog remains a constant manifestation. When we exit the fog, sun and all, it will soon disappear altogether. Now here comes a wrench to throw into that sweet theory. A test paradigm applied to check the model. Yes, I know that's your job as scientist, but I just heard the microwave ping and I want to get to my blintz before it cools. What about plants? Before the Cretaceous, flowering plants were minor or altogether absent from the flora of most regions. At the end of it, the KT boundary, almost everything on the land dies, 90% of known species of megafauna at least, and flowering plants suddenly rise up to rule the plant world. That had to be one wild ride, an event that kills off that many species, but somehow not all of them, without destroying everything to the point where no fossil record could possibly survive. Mightn't the angiosperms, flowering fruity plants, have needed different frequencies of light for their photosynthetic processes to function optimally, and the older types, such as gymnosperms, preferred the older, more comfortable ones? So I propose that the world was covered in thick to mild fogs and smogs until quite recently, i.e. the Holocene, at which time the solar family moved free of my posited molecular cloud. What could this mean for tetrapods everywhere? Considering the philosophical conundra currently wreaking havoc with our comfortable notions about dinosaurian predation, intelligence, life cycles, and their correlations with food chain specificity, I think it's time to take a wild bill soapbox look at Cretaceous predation. Suspend judgment for a moment, fellow dino fans, as I delve into ecological errantry. A foggy day in Dinosaur Town. Picture the Maastrichtian atmosphere as a pea soup, a muzzy, smoggy prospect, murky as the ocean off a river delta, so that wildlife of the times mightn't be able to see more than a few hundred meters before the haze closed around, leaving everything beyond that a mystery. Or was it? From what I read, I'm not plugging Whitmer Labs here, but I might if plied with beer and fragrant smokes, it seems like at least one megacarnivore, unless you're going to argue he ate truffles, by virtue of superior olfactory hypertrophy, could follow his nose to fast food. Now, I understand that the farther you got off the water, the quicker the haze would abate, of course, so that mountain-dwelling types might be less affected by blindness or substantive occlusion of perspectives, whereas ambush predators at the water's edge could always find a few uncautious newcomers to blunder their way. There might also be frequent or infrequent ecological disasters where high oxygen and methane components combined might add force and area of effect inflation to oil field, tar pit, or bituminous lake outgassing caused explosions. Events like this might wipe out large, usually local populations at inconvenient moments. Sodom and Gomorrah come to mind. These fuel air explosions could explain specific prodigies of fossification, why certain areas have a rich, well-preserved record, while other localities akin in time and space, geologically speaking at least, have next to nothing. Moreover, if you are familiar with the Cameroonian burping lake phenomenon, which is recent, you will be aware that you don't even need an explosion to kill everything in an area. All you need is carbonation. Localized extinctions like I have hyperbolized may or may not have been one of the mechanisms necessary or attendant to the creation and preservation of any fossil record at all, but they do serve to suggest that other mechanisms be considered, something all the more necessary since so many folks have accepted the bolide-driven evolution scenario today taught in many schools without reservation, solely on the Chicxulub evidence, which is fragmentary and circumstantial in the extreme. Conclusions. Much more research, is required to trim these raw, untutored conceptions down to hard scientific bones of contention worthy of the community at large. I eagerly throw my energies into the effort at every opportunity, and hope you will too. For now, however, let us both hope that our beloved Tyrannosaurus Rex had enough to eat prior to the KT boundary. After all, we wouldn't want him to starve to death. Wild Bill Cox. DPE, HFT, PHO, TZF. dilettante par excellence, highfalutin thinker, paleontological hanger-on, tetrapod zoology blog fan. As always, I leave you with my research material. Bibliography: Bradbury et al. Care and Feeding of Your New Tyrannosaurus Rex, published in Astounding Fiction magazine, June 1956. Hung, Samo, Drunken Tai Chi, Runmei Shaw, 1976, not available in the U.S. All About Books, Dinosaurs and Other Strange Beasts of the Past, All About Books, Limited, 1963. Sheen, Charles, Dromio, Where Soars Art Thou? A Dinosaur Love Affair. Dicey Pub, Opsit, 2009. Flint, Larry. Saskatchewan dinosaur hunters find biggest coprolite ever. Hustler Review of Hentai Paleontology, 2011. Naish, Darren. Someone ought to draw a picture of that. A forest wrassid rafting across Africa on the back of a turtle. Comment in letter section of Tetrapod Zoology.